The New England Patriots have spent over $245 million in the first few days of free agency in 2021. They went from a team that some people like myself thought could enter a rebuild, but Bill Belichick and the Patriots had other plans. As we know, the Patriots had a league-high 8 players opt out in 2020 due to COVID, and they finished 2019 at 7-9. This was the Patriots and Bill Belichick's first losing season since the 2000 season. It was their first season without a minimum of 10 wins since 2002, which is just insane if you think about it. Anyway, the Patriots have spent more than any other team in free agency so far and made a lot of upgrades to their roster over the past couple of weeks. This leads us to the question of, despite coming off a 7-9 season and signing all these players, how good are the Patriots right now? Are they good enough to make another Super Bowl run, make the playoffs, or did they not get much better at all? Let's run through most of their offseason moves and we'll revisit that question at the end of the video. We'll start with a pair of tight ends. Tight end Hunter Henry for 3 years and $37.5 million, and tight end Jonnu Smith for 4 years and $50 million. I mentioned in my free agent reaction video how the Patriots may have went from the worst tight end group in the NFL to a top 5 group in a span of 24 hours. Now, instead of having to rely on Dalton Keene, Devin Asiasi, and Ryan Izzo, they can go to 2 established tight ends that are each top 10 in the league right now. Henry is a former second-round pick and has also dealt with injuries in his career, including an ACL tear in 2018. Despite all of that, you know what you're getting with Henry. He's a good run blocker, still 26 years old, and a solid red zone threat and a solid receiving option in general. For Jonnu Smith, he's one of the freakiest athletes in the NFL. According to Player Profiler, he ranks above the 80th percentile in the 40-yard dash, speed score, burst score, and catch radius. We saw glimpses of him behind Delanie Walker in Tennessee his first 2 years, but after the increased playing time, Smith was more than just a backup tight end. He's still just 25 years old, one of the better yards after catch tight ends in the league, and just like Henry, is another good option in the red zone coming off an 8-touchdown season in 2020. The Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez comparison is often made for pairs of tight ends in New England. It was mentioned when Gronk was paired with Martellus Bennett and even Dwayne Allen. But while I never expect Gronk and Hernandez to be replicated, this is the closest thing the Patriots have had since that. Next, we'll go on to a couple of outside linebackers. Matthew Judon for 4 years and $56 million, and outside linebacker Kyle Van Noy for 2 years and $13.2 million. On the first day of free agency, the Pats took Matthew Judon from their conference rival Baltimore Ravens. Judon was a 5th-round pick in 2016 and has been very productive as a pass rusher since receiving playing time back in 2017. He will stay in a 3-4 scheme, which definitely helps, and being only 28, you have to imagine that Judon can play at a high level for at least a couple more years. My one concern with Matthew Judon in free agency was how many of his sacks in Baltimore were coverage sacks, because Baltimore arguably had a top 3 secondary in football while he was there. But that honestly shouldn't matter in New England because the Patriots also have one of the better secondaries in football as well. In the past 4 seasons, Judon has averaged 8 sacks and 2 forced fumbles per 16 games. Could it be a slight overpay? Maybe, but hey, that's what free agency is, to be honest. If you've been a Patriots fan for more than 2 years, you remember who Kyle Van Noy is. Van Noy spent 4 seasons in New England before departing for Miami in 2020. He was surprisingly released after 1 season where he actually was pretty productive for the Dolphins. Van Noy won 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots and played a huge role in 2018's playoff run where they beat the Los Angeles Rams. With the addition of the 2 outside linebackers, they now have a position group of not only Judon and Van Noy, but Chase Winovich and 2020 second-round pick Josh Uche out of Michigan. Now on to wide receiver, where the Patriots brought in Nelson Agholor for 2 years and $26 million, and wide receiver Kendrick Bourne for 3 years and $22.5 million. The Patriots have had an underwhelming receiving core the past few years now, and they really tried to upgrade it by signing a couple guys in this free agency. Agholor was a first-round pick of the Eagles back in 2015, and after 5 years of disappointment in Philly, he joined the Raiders last season where he had his best season of his career. The fit does seem kind of weird considering Cam Newton isn't the best deep ball passer at this point in his career, and that's really Nelson Agholor's specialty. But the Patriots could use some sort of field stretcher to their offense, especially with Henry, Smith, and Edelman operating in the middle of the field. For Kendrick Bourne, he was a consistent wide receiver 3/4 for the 49ers the past few seasons. The amount of money he got was a bit surprising, but Bourne is a consistent player and a good red zone option. He's coming off a career high in receiving yards with 667 and has 11 touchdowns over the past 3 years. A receiving core of Julian Edelman at 35 years old, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Agholor, and Kendrick Bourne is nothing amazing, but still an upgrade from what they had last year. On defense, they also brought in former Eagles secondary player Jalen Mills, who started out as a cornerback but made the transition to play just about every other position last season. Mills saw over 180 snaps at box, free safety, slot corner, and outside corner in 2020. He's coming off the best season of his career, and if there's one thing Bill Belichick looks for in a defender, it's versatility. 4 years and $24 million may seem like a lot, but if anyone can turn Mills into a consistent and versatile player, it's probably the Patriots. They made a couple of other small signings that couldn't end up helping out a lot, like former Jets defensive lineman Henry Anderson and nose tackle Devon Godchow, formerly of the Miami Dolphins. Even Ted Karras, who was a former New England Patriot but spent 2020 in Miami, is a very solid interior offensive lineman to be a backup. I forgot to mention, but they even traded for another former Patriot, right tackle Trent Brown, who was acquired from the Las Vegas Raiders for a late round pick. Brown has had trouble staying healthy, but when he's out there, he's still a solid right tackle in this league. Despite all of their spending in free agency, the Patriots found a way to retain defensive tackle Lawrence Guy, defensive end Dietrich Wise, center David Andrews, special teamer and cornerback Justin Bethel, and of course quarterback Cam Newton. And that's really what it comes down to for the 2021 Patriots. Yes, they had the luxury of spending wildly in free agency due to their quarterback being on a one-year deal, but that could all go for nothing if Cam Newton does not improve from last year. Some of you might forget, but Cam and the Patriots offense was rolling the first 3 weeks of the season. The Pats averaged 29 points per game and went 2-1, and their one loss was at Seattle in week 2, where they were 1 yard away from possibly being 3-0. After Cam missed a week due to COVID, he did not look the same upon his return. He explained on the podcast I Am Athlete that it was not only hard to be away from the team, but hard to learn the playbook of Josh McDaniels, who has been known to have one of the more complicated offensive playbooks in the NFL. If New England gets the Cam Newton that we saw the first 3 weeks of 2020, this is probably a 10 or 11 win team. If they get the post-COVID Cam Newton, then maybe they go 8-8, maybe 9-7. And it's easy to play this game of what if, but on the top of my head, I can remember the Patriots losing at least 2 or 3 games on the final play. So if they went differently, maybe they could have been a playoff team last year. You could say that for every team, I get that, but if this Patriots team was not that far off in 2020, despite having all those COVID opt-outs and things not going their way at the quarterback position, imagine if Cam Newton plays like a competent quarterback in 2021. I still don't think they're better than Buffalo and Miami. It all depends on the development of Tua Tagovailoa, but there are 3 wildcard spots now, so I would imagine that the playoffs are very possible for New England. We still don't know what they plan on doing on 15 overall in late April's draft, but there are plenty of options. Do they improve their receiving group even more by going Jalen Waddle or Rashad Bateman? Do they take J.C. Horn or some other cornerback to get younger in their secondary? We'll have to see, but I did say this in my free agent reaction video as well, that I do think it's very possible of them trading up for a quarterback. I think it's very much in play for New England. Justin Fields is an obvious target, assuming that Lawrence and Wilson go 1-2, but even Trey Lance out of North Dakota State is very intriguing. If you could have a mentor for Trey Lance, a guy that had a similar play style in his prime, a guy that was once the MVP of the league, and a guy that has the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback by a wide margin, then who better than Cam Newton? Lance probably needs at least a year on the bench, but learning the system, learning from Cam, and coming into a beneficial situation for a young quarterback in year 2 with a good roster around them seems like a good fit for Trey Lance in my opinion. Spending big in free agency is often risky and it's very unpatriot-like, but we'll find out relatively quickly if it was worth it or not. I am excited to see the Patriots offense and all the 12 personnel, 22 personnel, and see how the 2 tight ends mesh together in 2021. Leave in the comments what your reaction to this Patriots free agency was and what you expect from them next season. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like and subscribe for more NFL content, and I'll talk to you guys next time.